Hey, Andy, thank you so much for joining us today. You were a big part of contributing to our book, Decompile Your Mind, An Engineer's Guide to Thoughts and Emotions. As we were doing our research, we came across your very helpful blog post on perfectionism. And that blog post talked about what it's like to be a woman engineer and all the things that you navigate with that. So we included some of your work in our book, and it's so great to have you here today.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here and flattered that you found my post and enjoyed it and was able to use some of it for your audience.
Before we get started with our questions for you, maybe you can just spend a little bit of time telling us what you do as an engineer.
I'm a trained civil engineer. I have a master's in water resources engineering. So I used to be a consultant. I did all sorts of design from designing dams and reservoirs, stormwater pumping facilities, treatment plants. My specialty was in groundwater in particular and doing like aquifer storage and recovery systems. Now I work for a tech company and we do some of the technology and the modeling that civil engineers might use to do their calculations and simulations, and, as well as the CAD for it. So it's a little bit of a transition, but it's still within the civil engineering industry and public infrastructure.
Right. Well, our first question for you today is what are some of the biggest challenges engineers face regarding their mental health?
I think for engineers, it's sometimes really difficult to take that first step in admitting that they might not know something. Because as we go through our schooling and university, we're almost rewarded for getting right answers and knowing the best solution or the most creative solution to a problem. And so when it comes to your mental health, if you're struggling with it, you have to admit to, oh, I can't do this on my own. I need to talk to somebody. And us as humans, we all need people to talk to and connect with. So it's not unusual for engineers to need that as well, but to just I guess acknowledge that that's something that you might need help with. It can be a bit of a struggle for someone who is really used to knowing exactly what to do and getting a lot of their like personal, like personal growth and personal recognition from what they know. And I think as you continue in your career, it gets reinforced.
Yeah.
And you might hesitate to go for help if you think that it's being vulnerable at work or talking about your needs with people that you're close to might make it look like you don't know something and don't know how to do your job, or it might just set you back from being that person that would go for the promotion.
Mhm.
And a lot of the engineers that I worked with are very like confident and forward at work, and that tends to be like what's reinforced and who gets promoted.
Mm.
And I think those people in particular might be the ones that struggle the most because then they feel they can't talk about things that aren't perfect in their life. I
Yeah.
will say that some of the engineers I've worked with, like when they've gone through really hard periods in their life, whether it's, a divorce or they just had their first kid or something that's kind of a transition and they're able to open up more, I do see that others around them are able to connect more with them and it benefits everyone. So I really wish that people did that more like in the workplace. And they used to say like bring your whole self to work. I feel like it's true that you don't want to feel like you have to put up a certain face in front of your coworkers in order to be accepted or in order to get a promotion that you feel you deserve, but you might have to hide something in order to get it. I think we're moving in a good place as an engineering industry, but there's still a lot of work that we have to do in terms of like our soft skills and our mental health and things like that.
Yeah, it sounds like normalizing that sometimes we're not going to have every answer. And while it's great to be confident and competent and skillful, it also is human to not always have the answers. And so, kind of making some room to allow for that. So, our next question is what parts of the book stand out to you as helpful or impactful?
I loved the chart. I probably won't be surprising as an engineer, but I thought being able to see the whole context of something, like you had the distortions and all the cognitive distortions. As I've gone through my mental health journey, there's definitely one specific ones that I've talked about more often, but just seeing it all written out and having that tool, I feel like is really powerful in giving you the language of being able to say like, oh, this is how I typically start to think of things that in one sense might be really good for, being an engineer and being very analytical, but it might be that I've gone too far into the analytical engineer side.
Mhm.
And being able to like put a name to that cognitive distortion and be able to talk about it, I thought was really helpful. There's actually a few different charts as I was reading, like the emotions chart. All of them are emotions that we know intuitively, and we may or may not be really good at naming and self-aware, but just seeing it there on a page can help, I guess, like filter in where you're trying to go with your analysis of like, oh, this is the emotion that I'm feeling, and it's kind of related to this other emotion, and just like giving someone the language to talk about it, I thought was really cool. Because I think a lot of people can start to narrow in on the details, especially if you're an engineer and you're like very good at the details. But
Mhm.
if you can come out to like that bigger picture and see everything that's happening, it might give you a whole different perspective than you otherwise would have.
I think when we were figuring out how we wanted to present this information, charts just felt supernatural for what we were trying to do. A lot of people have asked us, like, okay, engineers are people too. Like, why write a book specifically for engineers about mental health? And I think